Hi, y'all. Thanks, Internet. All right. Hi, y'all. Thank you so much for joining. It's Labor Day. I know we're all just here on a wing and a prayer. So thank you so much for joining. And let's get spooky. So tonight we're making the giant spooky spider web. But so y'all can see while I'm doing this here, I'm actually going to scale it to 1/3, but I'll still be calling out dimensions for the big one. But once you figure out how to make this, you can really figure out how big you want it. So when I made it online the first time, it was 3 foot by 3 foot. But here tonight, we're just going to do 12 inches by 12 inches so you can see what I'm doing. Because really, once you figure out how to make it, you can scale it up or scale it down. And it's honestly, it's super simple. It's super inexpensive. We're just using yarn and scissors and little beads if you're feeling fancy. So you can make a ton of these just from what we have and really scale them up to what you need. So, you know where you're going to put them in your house. So you get to decide, well, how big do I want this? And that's the fun part. So thank you all for joining. For everyone live here, I'm going to answer questions at the end. So as we're going through, if something comes to you, just put it in the chat or make a note for it, and then we'll get to it at the end of the class. So we'll do that then. And then otherwise, kindly just make sure you don't take yourself and your Zoom computer into the bathroom, because this is a live class. This is just beginner adults having fun. So without further ado, let's see if you can make sure you can see my hands here. Perfect. All right. Hooray. Yeah, let's get the spooky, because it's 1,000 degrees in Dallas, Texas, y'all, and it's not happy time. So happy to be here. I'm zooming this out so we can see, because we're making a big web, but we're starting with this really inexpensive eco cotton yarn, of course, from Michaels. And we have so many yards, we can make so many webs with it. I got these really fun pony beads. They're iridescent and fun. I thought they looked like dewdrops from far away. And these are optional, right? If you don't want to do these, you don't have to. So it's really easy to omit as we're crafting. We have scissors, hooray. We have a tape measure, always handy. And we have the unsung heroes of the craft world, binder clips. I have so many binder clips. I have so many uses for them. They really, really help you out. So, this is a tiny but mighty team of materials here. So like I said, we're going to do this in 1/3 scale. So if the original spider web, the right angles were 36 inches by 36 inches, if we divide that by 3, we'll get 1 foot by 1 foot, right? Because 36 inches is 3 feet divided by 3, 1 foot. So we're going to start at our baby scale here, just so y'all can see what I'm doing. So we're going to start with our right angle, and we're going to start by cutting 12 inches for our edges. I'm going to unfurl my skein so I find it easier. Get my handy dandy ruler out. And honestly, with this, you really don't have to be terribly exact at all, because it's organic, right? Our spider web is an organic material. Spider webs themselves are never perfect. Then I'm just going to add about 1 inch to everything. So we'll end up doing about 13 inches. Cut. That's about 13. Okay. Okay, so I have 2 strings at 13 inches. And again, this is at our 1/3 scale. So everybody who's trying to party and do the 3 foot by 3 foot, you would go ahead and cut 2 strings at 39 inches, right? Because we're timesing it by 3 for the big ends. So I'm just going to take 2 ends of these. We're just going to loop them together. Overhand knot. Hooray. Okay. So if I separate them, I'm going to get them to form about of a right angle. Can you see that? So this is going to be the edges of our spider web. And then we're going to build our web within this triangle. So since these are our main boo things here, I'm going to tie a knot on the end just so it doesn't fray on us. Just a single knot. And I'm going to grab a binder clip. It's just going to weigh it down for us because we're just playing with string. We're going to be moving it around a lot. I just clipped it on the end. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Doing just an overhand knot on the edge just to keep our yarn from fraying. And then I'm going to throw a binder clip on the edge just to weigh it down. So we've got a nice right angle. Great success. Now, friends who are playing the bead game, if you wanted to play the bead game and add a couple beads to your spider webs so it looks like dewdrops, before you throw your binder clips on here, I would add like 2 to 3 little beads onto our main edges so we can have some there. So I'll just put 2 here, 1 here. We'll call it good. And of course, if you don't want to do the beads, don't worry about it. Omit that step. I'm also going to put a binder clip. Or actually, you know what? I'm going to use my weight here. I'm going to use the weight of my tape measure to weigh this down. Okay, so we've got our right angle. Now we're going to do the pieces. So I'm going to cut 5 strings at 16 inches. And if for the people at home who are scaling up, if you want to do that, the big 1/3 length, right, we're going to cut all these little pieces. We're going to cut 16 inches. And if you're scaling up at home, you would go ahead and cut 48 inches. So you would cut 5 strings at 48 inches rather than if you're baking the 1 foot by 1 foot one, which are 5 strings at 16 inches. So I'm going to steal my own tape measure. We're not having to be exact here. So we're going to have extra on these pieces on purpose, but it's better to have more than less. And, you know, our cotton yarn is really inexpensive, so we're going to take that to our advantage. Now that I've cut this one at 16, oops, let's get in the frame here. Now that I've cut this one at 16 inches, I'm just going to measure here and cut. Kindly ignore my baby dog in the background if you can hear him, who is on the patio and very much wants to help teach this class. And 5. It is not too hot for baby dogs to be on the patio at this time. Okay. So we have 5 strings at 16 inches. And if you're making the 3 foot by 3 foot, you're going to cut 5 strings at 48 inches. Great success. Okay. I'm going to put these over here. And now we're just going to tie them all to our kind of anchor corner here. And we're not going to do anything fancy. We're literally just going to do an overhand knot to connect them. Because once we have our web all pretty, then we're going to clean up this edge. So this can be just a mess, and that's okay. We're going to clean it up. Okay. So we're going to do one at a time. So we're going to pick up everything. I grabbed one of our new strings, and we're just going to keep overhand knotting it to tie it together. Now I just did an overhand knot and combined all of them. Now some people may find this a little stressful, but you can also do one at a time, or you can grab all 4 of your other, or all 4 to 5 of your other strings and just grab your end and do a big old overhand knot and tie them all together. So whatever works for you. But again, you know, spider webs are very organic forms. They're made by spiders. They're not perfect. So we're not worrying the fact that, you know, this isn't going to be perfect exact lengths. Okay, so we just have a big knot over here. And now I'm just organizing the strings. I just want them to lay out all flat again. We've got our ends. Okay, just kind of pulling them out so they all lay flat. Great. It's starting to look like a web, if only a little bit. So we're gonna do the same thing that we did on these ends. If you're playing the bead game, you want to add a couple dewdrops go ahead and tie off the edge of your knot. Excuse me, tie off the edge of your string in just a little overhand knot, just because we don't want our yarn to fray while we're working with it. And go ahead and slip a bead or two on each of these strings. And again, if you don't want to add these, don't. No big deal. Anybody joining in, this is our spider web at 1/3 of the scale. So we'll throw a bead over here. All right, it's becoming spooky. And we're gonna add binder clips at the edges of all of these because we're gonna want them to get weighed down, and we're not gonna want to have them get all tangled. It'll be a whole thing, we'll be sad, you know. So we've got this goofy looking shape. We've got our edges, we've got these pieces. Here's our knot we're gonna clean up. This is where we start losing math and just kind of start feeling organic, right? Because spider webs are made by spiders. I decided it was going to be more fun rather than give everyone dimensions for each rung here, and rather let people just play. So when you've got your spider web set up like this, go ahead and grab your skein. Or drop your skein. Throw your skein on the floor if that suits you. And go ahead and just kind of hold it up and think about, okay, well, where would I like my first row to be? Where would I like my second? And start thinking about that. And so if I want my first little intersection to be about here, that looks good to me. I'm going to make sure I have ample room to tie on the other end. So I'm going to give myself, what is that? It's probably 1.5 inches. 2 inches. All right. I'm just going to drape it over and give myself about 2 inches on either edge and just cut the string. Okay, so we're going to eyeball this because everyone's web is different. It depends on how tight you want it to be, how loose. Right now, this is about 2 inches away and 2 inches away in either direction. Okay, so I'm going to start up top here. It's going to get a little messy, but just know that we're going to tie each part. We're going to start top to bottom. We're just going to knot. We're going to knot, 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 and knot. And that's it. And that's how we're going to keep doing this and make our fun form. So we're going to do what we did and take it up and just do another knot just so it doesn't fray, to make our lives easier. And let's see, it's about 2 inches. Now I'm literally just going to do an overhand knot and tie, right? Oops, see, this is where it moves. So really just know that we are tying our string from top to bottom each row, and that's it. So I'm going to put it over here. Okay, make sure you can see. Oh. All I did was do an overhand knot. I left plenty of space. And I'm not tying it too tight because I like being able to pull these left and right as we're still playing it. So when you have all your strings together, you can start to pull them and loosen them and tighten them and make them kind of suit your space and make them look spooky. So we have things here with measurements, and this we're really being organic because spider webs are still organic forms. Okay, so we've got our tie, And if we're playing the bead game, this is a good place before you start tying all your other knots to throw another bead on. Again, this is all optional. Not this end as well. It's hard tying things that are far away from you. Right. We can see why the binder clips are here, because as you start playing with this, you know, they're just strings, they're very light, so they want to move. So having something, if you don't have binder clips, something similar to just weigh your piece down as you're working with it is really helpful. I'm going to throw a bead on, move it over here. But all I'm going to do now is reline it up. Looking at these, they look pretty spooky. Okay. And I think about here is where I'm going to try and tie these together. So all we're doing is just an overhand knot. So as you start to do your first couple, hopefully it becomes pretty relaxing, because all we're doing is just tying knots. Just a little closer. We're going to get rid of this. I'm going to pull this closer so you can, I have better control. Come here, buddy. And it starts to get really organic, really fast. That's what makes it look real, right? It's not, we're not using too much math because we don't want it to look factory made, right? We're looking at wabi-sabi, right? The principle of perfectly imperfect. So all I did is a loose overhand knot. And now that this isn't too tight, I can pull this over. And we just keep tying this. I'm going to plug my computer in so I don't lose the whole class. Thanks, y'all. All right. So hopefully that gives people a little time to catch up if you're playing live. And all I'm going to do is keep doing that. So for our web, it's really just crossing over the warp and the weft and tying over a knot. And keep doing that. So I've got this loose. See, I'm running out of string. That's fine. I'll just keep scooting it over because I haven't tied my knots too tight. And the first couple ones, everything keeps getting a little tangled. It's like, oh boy, what am I doing? But as soon as you just keep kind of literally making your web, things will start to get a little more together. But yeah, it's a little tricky at first, but hopefully as you keep doing it, it becomes nice and relaxing. So all we're doing is just every time we run into our next row, doing like a really loose overhand knot. Right, so this one is short. That's cool. So it's a good opportunity to show how, since we didn't tighten these knots, let's pull this down. We only did simple overhand knots, so I can pull this string and move move where things are over a little bit, right? Put up or down. We're starting to get spooky. This one is a little short. That's cool. It's fun if you look online and see spider webs, they don't always kind of go the whole way. So we'll do a bigger one just so it's a little easier to see on camera. Let's get 2 feet so we really have room to work. Tie another one. Tie off a knot. I'm going to tie it over here. And just using overhand knots. Okay. So we just got that attached. And now we can start playing with something around here. Again, it's really organic. I cut off 2 feet. If you want to throw a bead on, do that. I'm going to not have a bead here, so I'll just tie this again. It's difficult to tie knots and also show you them, but it's literally just, you know, the overhand knots we do to like tie our shoes. So no special joinery here. That's really far away from my other piece, so I'm just gonna loosen that knot up and tighten. Come here, buddy. That looks like a good distance. And I'll pull it a little more taut. So that's the thing with this. It's a lot of back and forth and playing until you start to get more of your shape. And let's say I want to have a bead between here and here. I'll now go ahead and grab one. Love it. Hello. And I'm just gonna cross this over. Right, so if it's too far away, all I'm doing is loosening up the knot we just made, and I'm just pulling in the slack. Cool. So we're not fully tightening it again until we have all our pieces in a row. Then we can start to really pull these knots taut. While you're working with making your web, it's easier to kind of keep these knots nice and loose until you've decided you're done. And for me, let me do this row and we'll talk about how to tie things off and all that good stuff. Okay, if you want another bead here, do it. So this is at 1/3 scale, right? Because these pieces are about a foot and a foot. And when I made the original one, it was 36 inches and 36 inches, but that's so big, it's hard to show you. So we scaled it down just by dividing by 3. So these pieces are now 12 inches, these pieces are 16 inches. We go backwards, 36 inches, 48. And these were just being organic and kind of draping down and figuring it out. So I threw another bead between here and here, and now I'm going to tie Again, you just kind of re-straighten them, see what looks good. Like, go online and look at spider webs. You'll really see that they aren't perfect. And that's, I think one of the reasons they're so beautiful. Looking at nature and then designing from it, that term is called biomimicry. So, right, I kind of decided maybe this space is too long. All I'm going to do is go back and pull my knot apart again, pull in a little snack. Go ahead and do this one. Pick it up, put my string under, put it around that cross, tie it, but not too tight. If you have another binder clip, I grabbed my tape measure earlier here just to kind of weigh this down. That works. Whatever works for you. Yeah. Let's decide maybe I don't want this to be a perfect kind of shape, right? Maybe I want this cross to be about here. Okay, that looks good. So I'm just kind of making a note of where I'd like the intersection to be. I'm grabbing that intersection. I'm picking up my working end of my string and putting it under our strings with the binder clip. And I'm putting it behind our cross. Pulling that knot. And before it gets too tight, I'm like, well, that's a lot of space here. Maybe I want it to be tighter. I'll pull, make it a little tighter, and then I'll pull the knot closed. And do the same thing here. That looks like a good spot. Grabby, grabby. And this is why we tie off our ends, because they want to prey on us. So I'm going to do that quickly. Over here, hanging out. Fun. Okay, so I've got a lot of slack here. That's great, right? Because as we keep making this, we may decide we may want to pull these down and widen this up. So having slack is nice. It's also nice to have things that end a little short. Because again, if you kind of go online and look at spider webs, they're not perfect. So this is kind of a good jumping point to start getting us where we want to go. So I'm going to do one more, and then I'm going to talk about how to tie off our ends and then wrap this up. So let's get another string. Grab your skein. Since these are the ends, or kind of edges of our web, I'm going to drape over string from edge to edge. I'm going to give a lot of space here because I'd rather have more than less. Let's cut this and then measure. So this one ended up being being 30 inches. Now I'm probably not going to use all of that, but again, we've got the luxury of having like many yards on our skein here. So I'm going to start again, and we're just going to go through and tie a knot, 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 tie a knot. So I find it's a really easy, just keep going in the same direction, just to keep yourself organized. Tie an end at the end of this rope, yarn, web, whatever you'd like to call it, so it doesn't fray. And I'm actually going to take my clip off and just tie these two together. I'm grabbing the both of them. I'm just going to do an overhand knot. And yours will be a lot faster because you will be directly underneath you instead of trying to tie a knot and show people. Okay, so all we did was just a quick overhand knot. Great success, everyone. Picking this up again. I'm going to put the binder clip back on because, again, I like the weight. It just makes everything easier to see. I'm going to grab the other end of our string here. I'm going to grab a bead. You know what? We did a couple. We'll put one over here. Again, so this is really a choose your own adventure with if you'd like the beads or not. I found as I was making this, it's best to put kind of one in each little section here. So if I want a bead to go here on this string, all I would do is take the binder clip off and kind of push my bead up before I tie my knot. All right. I want some beads there. So it just takes a little bit of planning, but I would definitely have maybe 1 or 2 max beads per section because they do want to kind of weigh it down, which is fine too, right? Because again, like you start looking online at Spiderwebs, they've kind of got this like dribbity drabbity, you know, it's not perfect. So if you're like, oh no, I've got 2 or 3 beads on one section, that's totally fine, right? This is supposed to be spooky and fun and imperfect. So I'm going to do what we were doing. So it's a lot of straightening up and then retying here, but you know, I'm not in a spider's brain, but I imagine there's something similar when they're making their own webs. We're going to tie our knot here. So I'm going to grab our string. I'm going to tie a knot so it doesn't fray on us. La la la. I'm deciding that I'd like to have it be about here. I'm going to grab, I'm going to take our working leg. And I'm just going to throw it behind. We're just tying overhand knots. Straighten it out. I'm like, yeah, that looks like a pretty good distance. And again, if I'm like, I want more space, I'll just grab and pull apart my knot, and then I'll have more space again. So I can decide I can have a really big distance between this if I want. And I think, well, grab it. Pull open that kind of, you know, pretzel shape of our knot here. Move it back up. That looks like a nice space. Right, so what if I wanted the speed? The speed is on the outside, and if that was our edge, oh no, we've lost a bead. Not a big deal. We haven't tightened this, so all we have to do is undo it. Just doing a single hand knot. I'm just gonna push this, scoop, on the other side of where our knot's gonna be. We're gonna do it again. Hooray, now we have a bead. My X. Putting this around. And again, you know, this is your craft, right? So this is just a jumping off point for you. I grabbed the Eco Cotton yarn because I love that it was recycled and it was white and it was cotton, but Michaels has so many different yarns, whatever calls to you, whatever you love, get that, you know. This is all just for indoor. This is cotton, so I would keep this indoor. And if you do something outdoor, look for something like an acrylic or even a paracord that can really take the elements. And do the same thing here and just pull that bead up so it's included in the web, right? We've got extra, let's get this so you can see. We've got extra here on our little longer spots, but again, it's easier to have extra to be able to pull from if we decide we wanted to have not kind of maybe like a perfect little crescent shape edge, if we want it to be even weirder, that's great. We've got the space like that to do that. X overhand. Okay, it's a little messy when you start making it, and then once you're in your own web, you kind of get it. But I think that's just like life. If you have any cats, I would definitely secure them because this is just cat bait. Hide your cats. I'm going to decide I want a bead here, so I'm going to go ahead and grab one now. String it. And then just make sure it's in between where I want it. Fun just to kind of adjust and start figuring it out as you go. We're going to close this up. And let's see. I'm going to pull this down a little bit, pull this knot down a little bit. Oop, I forgot a bead. That's okay. If I decide I don't want a bead there. And I'm going to go ahead and put a bead here. Now these two are my edges because we're making this 90-degree kind of web. So I threw a bead here. We're going to do the same thing we did. We're just going to tie them together and then tie it off. This is a lot of extra string. So I'm just going to cut. So I have about 2 extra inches. And now I'm just going to tie these 2 ends together. And decide where I want that. I think about here looks nice. So I'm just, so I can see what I'm doing, I'm going to tie a knot to where I want the kind of edges to be, just so I know. And now I can grab both pieces and do an overhand knot. Cut off the slack. Okay. So we can see, we can really keep doing this till the cows come home, keep kind of pulling where our strings are. I would do another, I did 7 on the one that was 3 foot by 3 foot. And on the 1 foot, I would do at least 5 strings that go across, right? Let's go ahead and throw a binder clip on this. We're gonna start cleaning up our edges. So this is just our little mini web. Let's decide, maybe I'll make this one a little tighter. Now, if I've got things where I want it, then I'll pull it taut. So I'm just kind of cleaning up the edge here. This outer, what'll be our outer edge. I'm just gonna pull that taut. That looks good to me. Pull our knots taut. Awesome. And then you can just go ahead and take your scissors and just trim it. So give it, it's about a 1/4 of an inch away from your knots. You can get a little closer if you want, but I wouldn't get right on the knot. And then this knot, okay, this is a little messy, so I would go ahead and I'll actually retie this. It's a nice clean overhand. But since we're going to use our command hooks to hook them, it's kind of nice to have a bigger one. So I'm actually going to do, no, actually I'll leave it. Okay, come here. Do this. Now I'm going to kind of tie knots when it's far away from you. Oop, okay. Clean the edge. Let's decide. I'm going to pull some of this down. Now you can absolutely, I would definitely do another string here and here. But again, this is just trying to like, you know, fit this in our class. So we have 2 outside strings. We have 5 of these ones. That works for the small one, for the 3-foot one. And of course you can triple this, right? You can make this 6 foot, right? It's really your creature. So I'm going to say, I'm going to tighten this one, and we're just going to kind of clean up the edge just for the sake of time, right? But I would keep going. Do another one here, another one here. And so we have 2 outers, and then we have probably 5 in between. So we've got a warp and a weft, right? A criss and a cross, like this grid pattern. This one doesn't even go through. It's messed up. I like it, right? I'm going to cut this off too. The edges. Pull, you can cut, because now we've got 3, make sure you can see everything here. Now we've got 3 corners that we can hang from. Nope, that doesn't help because you can't see me. We've got 3 corners you can hang them from. This is a big old knot, right? So I'm going to pick this up. We're just going to tie this off. So depending on how much, depending on where you're going to hang it and how much space you have between your first warp and weft connection, you can even just tuck it inside itself and do a gathering knot. Or what I would do here is, honestly, I'm just going to trim it. I'm just going to trim my edges, because this isn't load bearing, this isn't anything. And now I've got a tiny little spider web. Yours will have more, but this is for the sake of our time of our class, that I can hang. So I love, in the class, I put these amazing little command hooks that are clear. So what I did is I took a command hook, or whatever hook you're doing, right? Your nail, and I put a nail right here in the center and hung it here, and then pulled kind of taut and crazy to decide where to hang. So then I have these 2 other pieces to hang it from. But I did, you know, these crazy little 90-degree ones, because I think it's fun, because it looks like, you know, they've built the web in the corner. So I just like to find, when you hang it, wherever you're going to hang it, or stretch it wherever you're going to stretch it, start with our piece in the middle, and then kind of pull, take your nail, your command hook. I love those. I wouldn't recommend those if I haven't used those. They're absolutely wonderful. They've come off a multitude of walls in my life. But nails, tacks, whatever you end up using. Start here, hang it, and then when you're in your space, then put a corner, kind of be like, okay, so that's hung, right? And then kind of stretch it to make sure. And then you can adhere right here. We'll hook your other corner here. So it's very organic. This is a quick one, right? We're going to have more here. But again, this is something that's super customizable, super organic and silly, and honestly inexpensive, right? Because we still have so much of our skein, even though we made just a little 1 foot by 1 foot one here. Even if we add, you know, we'll continue to add more warp and weft, right? We'll fill it out, right? To cut it to fill out the picture here. There probably. Right? And 5 and 5 is just a suggestion. This is your web. This is your spider. It's all about fun. So hopefully this is something that's therapeutic, really easy. If you have little ones in your life, they can at least help you do some measuring or some hanging. And, you know, if your strings are short, if things, you know, aren't perfect, that's kind of how it works, you know. That's one of the things that are beautiful about these webs. So I would love to answer any questions. I know there wasn't exact math with this, but I went back and forth, but I really think that giving some math and some organic, you know, being able to have people choose what makes sense for them and just kind of get your hands a little, not dirty, but choose, because there's no right or wrong in this. So whatever you're doing, you're going to have a really cool looking spider web. So I'm super excited that, you know, you joined, and hopefully it's fun and spooky. Thank you for bearing with me. I know this is difficult to teach overhead, so I appreciate, you know, kind of dealing with me while I'm tying these little knots here. And I'm super grateful you joined. So if you had fun, if you like this class, or maybe not this class, but some other ones I've taught, you can absolutely find me on Instagram at Probably Sketch. If you make anything, please tag me. I would love to hear or see what you did. That's like my joy. And I have a ton more Halloween classes going. Until Halloween, I'll be teaching Monday nights at 8 p.m. Central. So please join, share, be spooky, be creepy. And if you'd like to hang around and answer questions, I would love to answer them for you. So Chanel, what's going
on? So we have a couple questions already. Let me find the first one. So when you're making the spider web, how taut should it be? Or is that kind of up to preference?
It is up to preference, but honestly, keeping it looser is easier because so I'm going to take off the ones that I just put here for example. So what if I'm like, you know what? I don't like how taut this is. That's why I didn't tighten everything until the end, because it really is fun to kind of play around and then pull your knots tight. But if you're like, you know what? I absolutely hate the way this looks. Since we did just do single knots, you literally can just take your fingernails, undo your knot, and then retie it tighter. So I would say err on the side of keeping it a little loose rather than tighter, because it would be kind of a pain in the butt, but not impossible if you need to then add more string. If you do need to add more string, I would just tie them together side by side, and it'll be a little knot, and that's no big deal, right? So I would just do a little overhand action. It's really hard to tie knots when it's far away from you. Okay, do a little overhand action. I would pull that really tight so you can't see it, and then I would trim the edges, and then keep going. So if you decide you really want a longer one. Also, if you're like, I don't like the way this looks, that's a great opportunity to throw a bead and go ahead and cover your sins. But again, these are spooky and weird. So I love doing Halloween crafts as well, especially with beginners, because it's like, there's really not a lot of right or wrong here. It's just having fun. But now I've just covered that big knot we just tied with a bead, and no one's the wiser except for y'all. So now I can go ahead and decide if I really want this longer. We'll do the same thing we did. Do an overhand knot, tie it off, have a good day. Okay, but I know we have more questions, so good stuff. Yeah, I would err on the side of it being loose just because you can make it tighter. But if you do make it too tight, you can always do that and add on more string.
So I know you touched a little bit on this already, but how do you display your full-size web? Hang it from the ceiling or drape it over something?
You can do both. I did both. It just depends on where you want to put it in your space, right? I had one for the photos I hung in a door frame, since we have this right angle, right? You can see it on my cutting mat here. Right, this is the door frame, right? It's a perfect right angle. So I took one of those command hooks and I put it right in the corner of my frame. And then I just took another command hook, put it on the edge, and then, oops, then I pulled the whole thing over. No, and then took a command hook here, put it on the edge, and then on the three corners. So I thought that looked really fun because it kind of draped over my door and was all spooky. But I also, for another photo, took it, and now I'm gonna make things a little hard to see here for a second, but I just took it from the top, or not the top, but kind of like our little apex here, and draped it over a bookshelf. And I tucked this part up over the edge of the shelf so you couldn't see it, right? And then I draped it over my shelf and let gravity do the work. And then I just tucked it behind objects. I think I did end up putting some of those command hooks again to secure it, but a lot of these things, since this has gravity, you can either just tuck it behind your other objects or use the command hooks. The only thing I will say about those hooks, they're wonderful, but you really do have to follow the instructions with them. So when they say adhere it and then push it really hard on the wall and then leave it alone for an hour, they're not joking around, but it will come off. So I've gotten many apartment deposits back using those, but you do have to follow the instructions. Of course, you could do, thumbtacks or whatever else you have in the home, but I just like having stuff that comes off the wall and is some, only temporary when it comes to the holiday. But if you need your web up all year round, that you're not going to hear any judgments from me.
Excuse me, sorry. We don't have any more questions, but I did want to share one comment. Kathy said she is using white yarn with a metallic thread running through it, and it looks awesome even without the beads.
Yeah, love that. Love that. I think that's a great call. It's super fun, right? Because you get some scintillation, you get some movement of light and shadow. I love having these hang a little bit, if it's in a door frame, right, you're going to get some cool shadows. If it's even on your wall, if you have it hang just a little bit away, you'll get that shadow. Obviously, we can't see it here because I've got all the lights on in my home, so we're not getting a lot of shadow play. But yeah, have fun, right? Like, just kind of hold it up, whatever size you want to make, whatever you do, just hold it up and be like, ooh, this looks spooky. What if this is spooky, right? This is all supposed to be fun and play. It's one of the things I love about Halloween is that there's a lot of, joy and levity in such a quote unquote spooky season. So have fun. But yeah, love the idea of using the metallic. Thanks for throwing out another material option or colorway. I love it.
And that is it for comments and questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. I know this one is, not exactly measured and metered, but again, so much of making stuff with your hands, sometimes there just isn't a measurement. If you do ceramics or anything, it's really, you're in there and you're feeling it. And sometimes, I like to give measurements, but again, like, trust yourself, and the risk is low. We didn't spend too much on our yarn, even if our beads, hopefully you already have scissors. So, this is a good time to just play around, make mistakes, but we're not making mistakes. I'm sure whatever you do, it's going to look like a cool spider web. So thank you so much for joining, for watching, for dealing with my poor puppy. If you can hear him, I really hope you can't. And yeah, have a wonderful evening. I really appreciate y'all.